Let's stay with this parental leave scheme for a moment. It hasn't been very generously received by the commentators. Some say it's unfair, some say it's unfundable, or it's certainly unaffordable at this time. One of the leading economists, Saul Eslake, says it is a dreadful policy, quote unquote, a dreadful policy. On the line, Shadow Treasurer Joe Hockey, good morning.
Good morning, Neil.
Can we just get the detail on this? If a woman takes the money for 6 months and then doesn't go back to work, what happens?
Well, she's entitled to that money as it would be the case under her existing job if she were entitled to paid parental leave. But it is unlikely because what we think is that this is actually going to provide some incentive for the person to go back to work, obviously.
Yeah, but what if they don't?
To have a further child. But obviously, if they can leave their job at any time, they're not handcuffed to their job.
Yeah, but I don't. A woman has a baby, takes 6 months maternity leave, and you pay her at up to $75,000 for that, and she doesn't.
It's a replacement salary.
Okay.
It's the same.
Yeah, I understand that. But what if she doesn't go back to work? What if she says at the end of 6 months, no, I've changed my mind?
Well, she's entitled to do that.
So does she keep the money?
Well, yes, she does, because it's a workplace. From our perspective, this should be a workplace entitlement, like sick leave, annual leave, and it's part of the workplace. But the key point is, just a minute. The key point is, Neil, that people should not be financially penalised for having children. And the fact is that more and more people have no choice but to work because of the cost, particularly real estate in places like Melbourne and Brisbane and Sydney and so on. So it's not as if the choice that might have been around for our parents is around for parents today because of the cost of real estate.
But on what that means that every woman who's got a job and goes off to have a baby gets her salary for the next 6 months. She doesn't have to go back to work.
Well, you'd think that wouldn't be enough. I mean, people don't choose to leave work.
No, but that's the principle here. I thought it was all about productivity and keeping people in the workplace, but actually you get the money regardless of whether you go back to work.
Well, most people are going to go back to work now.
But is that a fact? You get the money regardless of whether you go back?
Well, you get it now. So it's no different. The bottom line is this is paid out of taxpayers' money under the government. From our perspective, it's paid out of the levy.
Yeah, but it's not paid at this rate.
Well, but it's replacement salary now. I mean, that happens to every employer. If you at 3AW, I don't know if you have a maternity leave plan at 3AW.
Well, certainly not for 6 months. No, I don't think so.
No, well, you probably haven't got that many women working there either. But I'd say to you that...
come on, we've got a lot of women working here. But anyway, that's beside the point.
Well, okay, men as well. So maybe if you were to have children and you were to take leave, what's the guarantee that you'll come back? But employers pay.
No, but I'm sorry, I misunderstood. I thought that one of the key parts of this scheme was that you only get the money if you go back to work. That's wrong, is it?
No, you get the money regardless. That's absolutely right.
Okay. Why so generous?
Well, I don't believe it's generous to replace someone's salary. I mean, can I make a couple of points here, Neil? The first is, of the people earning $100,000 a year or more under the age of 50, only 2% are women. 2% are women. That's something that is not only embarrassing for Australia, it is costing Australia productivity growth. And why? Well, because if people are trained in jobs and then for financial reasons actually leave those jobs, then they are going to detract from the economy. They are going to detract from the economy. Now, from my perspective, there are a few strong points that need to be made about this plan. Number one, it is going to increase workforce participation. Number two, it is going to increase productivity. Number three, people are not going to be financially penalised for having children.
Okay. Could I ask
you... And sorry, just one further point. It is job security for lower income women. I mean, for example, a lot of small business people, and I came from a family of small business, we had a huge turnover of young women who would go off to the public service when they were thinking about having children, or would go to a big business when they were thinking about having children. For small businesses that have people in young women in lower income jobs, whether it be a chemist shop, a newsagent or whatever, they never have been able to afford proper paid parental leave.
Well, can I ask you another? A lot of women have children over a shorter period of time. So you have a child, you get your 6 months' pay, you don't go back, but you still get the money, and then you have another child, but you're having you might stay home another 6 months and have another child after the other one's a year old. You become pregnant. You don't get anything for the next one, do you?
No.
Okay.
No.
So is this fair on the stay-at-home mums?
Well, the stay-at-home mums still get the entitlement of a baby bonus, but
nothing like this.
The issue is it is if we as men get sick leave and annual leave, right? Why should we financially penalise someone who works for having a child?
And why should we financially penalise somebody who stays home and looks after their kids because they get nothing?
It's not a financial penalty because they're no worse off.
Well, they're not getting, but if I'm working, I'm getting up to $75,000 for 6 months. If I'm staying home and having kids, I'm not getting anything.
Yeah, but the bottom line is you have been working. That's the thing, Neil. We need people to try and stay in the workforce, right? So from our perspective, if you're having children and you choose not to work, then there is no financial penalty. But if you are having children and you are working, there is a financial penalty in having a child. And from our perspective, that actually works to the disadvantage of not only society, it works to the disadvantage of the economy.
There's always a financial penalty having kids, but I guess that's...
Well, I know that. From my perspective, yes, but the thing is, you shouldn't have to, when young couples are sitting down and saying, are we going to have children? Now, with the cost of mortgages, the average home loan is well over $350,000, and people are looking at it and they're going, well, it is a financial decision about whether to have children.
And why again is the taxpayer doing this?
Well, it's going to be the 3,000 largest companies.
How much? Well, what percentage of the money do they provide?
Well, 100%.
Of it initially?
Oh, sorry, the total amount. Well, because there are a number of other factors that have come into play. For example, the government under our scheme will pay out less family tax benefit because people will not be getting that because they'll be getting a higher salary.
But isn't this tax levy only paying... sorry, go on.
Sorry. And secondly, because people will be remunerated at their replacement salary, they'll be paying tax on it. So therefore, there is a tax that comes into the federal government as well.
They're paying tax on money the taxpayer's given them.
Yeah, in that case, yes, in the replacement money, yes.
Okay, isn't it correct that the levy on the companies initially, at least, will only pay half the cost?
Well, when the scheme ramps up, it'll be more than that. No.
What about initially?
The total cost, Neil. The total cost of the scheme is $5.5 billion a year.
Okay, and how much of that is met by the levy initially?
Oh well, initially it depends on the initial numbers because it phases in, obviously. But as we've said previously, the levy plus reduced payments in family tax benefit, plus the increased tax that is going to come from people receiving replacement salary, plus the abolition of the government's current scheme, plus the fact that we're not going to let state governments double dip, that covers the total cost of the scheme.
Okay, so how much...
There's no cuts to... And can I just respond to what Kevin Rudd said this morning?
Yeah.
There are no cuts to health or education or anything else to pay for this scheme.
Okay,
but I'm sorry, Mr. Rudd. He's playing this game again of telling fibs.
How much of the initial $5.5 billion will be covered by the levy, and how much do you have to get from these other areas?
Well, it'll be about... I haven't got the exact numbers in front of me. I'm in a car on the Central Coast of New South Wales, but it will cover. The total costs are covered, Neil.
Yeah, but is it correct, as reported today, that only half of the initial cost will be... Initially, only half the cost will be covered by the levy?
No.
So what's the percentage, roughly?
Well, it'd have to be at least 50, 60%, 60 or 70%, but I'm not going to speculate, Neil, because I haven't got the numbers in front of me in a car,
Yep.
But I'd just say to you, the costs are totally covered. The costs are totally covered. You'll see the absolute details prior to the election, but the costs of the PPL are totally covered, by, firstly, the levy, secondly, the replacement of the state schemes with our scheme, thirdly, reduced payments on family tax benefits, fourthly, people are going to pay tax on their remuneration, and fifthly, the replacement of the Labor Party scheme. So all of that together covers the total cost and of the PPL scheme. So there is no net cost to the rest of the budget.
And when does the business levy finish?
Well, when we can afford to get rid of it.
So
we're not putting any timetable on it.
Okay.
We're not putting any timetable on it because we want to make sure business is going to benefit from this. I mean, business, particularly small and medium-sized businesses, will benefit from this because it increases participation, it delivers stability of workforce, and it ensures young women in particular are not going to end up being penalised for having children. I mean, this is it's a no-brainer from an economic perspective.
Okay, it's a no-brainer in a pretty dodgy economic situation. We all know the budget deficit's a problem. How can we afford it?
That's why we are fully funding it. And the Parliamentary Budget Office has done the numbers on this. We'll release the numbers in the next few days to prove that all this is covered. And by the way, the Labor Party scheme that is in place now just comes straight out of everyone else's tax money. So the Labor Party scheme is straight off the budget bottom line, yes, it does come from health and education, whereas our scheme is going to be fully funded by the levy and the associated savings on the abolition of the Labor Party scheme.
I understand that, but you're still making a decision. I mean, you could be putting extra money into education, health, roads, pensioners. Why do you put this ahead of them?
This actually increases productivity. It actually increases workforce participation, and hopefully it will continue to increase Australia's birthing rate. I mean, this is really important because, Peter Costello said one for mum, one for dad, one for Australia. Well, if people have financial security, if people actually know they're not going to be financially penalised for having children, they may well have more children, and we welcome that.
Okay, look, thank you for speaking to us. You're out in front. You're going to win the election? And don't tell me about Everest again, but no, it's Tony.
Well, no, Everest. I haven't climbed Everest. I've just done Kilimanjaro. But I find that it gets harder as you get closer. And the other thing, Neil, I mean, and we've seen it this morning from Kevin Rudd, they're going to get nasty. So, who knows where that.
What do you mean, the Cuts ad?
Oh, no, Kevin Rudd was on TV this morning, starting to make all sorts of hysterical and shrill allegations against us. And frankly, I'm sure Australians will see through it.
But what was he talking about? Cuts, wasn't he?
Well, what cuts?
Well, I don't know. Are they the allegations you made?
Well, he went further and said that we're talking about cutting penalty rates and so on. Our industrial relations policy has been out there for 4 months unchallenged. And now, all of a sudden, 3 weeks out from the campaign, he runs a big scare on it. I mean, come on. Australians will see through this.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Neil.
Shadow Treasurer Joe Hockey.